Welcome, Rick, and it's so great to have you at the American Pavilion because, you've done a lot for American cinema. But in some ways, I kind of feel like you're just getting started because you've made a movie which folks haven't seen yet, and we won't spoil except to say that they made Breathless. But Nova Vog, I did see it this morning, and I would like to be the first person to publicly say congrats. It's a wonderful movie. It's super charming. It's fun. It's a great way to reintroduce people to kind of the excitement of the French New Wave. We're here talking about the future of filmmaking, and I think there's something kind of fascinating about looking at the past to understand that. The New Wave itself is almost like a portal to, when young people get excited about movies and making movies. What was it like for you to discover the New Wave, and how did that affect the kind of filmmaker you wanted to be?
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating if you think about it now. The New Wave, if cinema is, 130 years old, Breathless is exactly the halfway point. What was so new to cinema then, such a modernist work, it's the halfway point of cinema history now, and yet it still looms large. It still, for me, represents freedom and personal expression, and I think that's what it was introducing, is the idea of a personal film. That the New Wave really made that explicit. And so in the movie, I was trying to capture that, just that excitement of doing your own thing and the absolute freedom that kind of came with it. So I think, to me, it's a eternal renewal. If I see those movies, I go, film it can be very simple and personal, and just never forget that. It's like a constant reminder. But that's been with us forever. That's like.
And it's also important to notice, watching the movie, you see all these great filmmakers when they're so young. Yeah. Most of those folks continue to make movies for decades. In Godard's case, for 60 plus years, really, until he decided he was done. He could still be making movies now if he had decided to stop. But that impulse is fascinating when you think about the fact that you yourself have been making movies now for quite a few years. And I'm curious about what motivates you. I mean, thinking about the chaos and the challenges of getting movies made and how much it takes out of you, how do you keep going?
Yeah, it was fun to finally make a movie. I think if you make enough films, you do it, lucky enough to do it long enough, you probably should make one film about making movies. So I always kind of joked about it, but I was like, this is it, So, the chaos, but the film is, such a great combination of like optimism and confidence and belief in what you're doing, mixed with complete like insecurity and chaos sometimes. So it's that you're walking a fine line every movie you do, which is kind of unnerving but exhilarating. So I was just trying to capture that, and I still feel that. Every film you feel like you're starting again. It's like, how's this gonna work? I've never been that confident. I don't think you should be. You have to be pushing yourself all the time. So it was fun for me to go back, even though I've made 20 whatever films, to go back to the mindset of making my first film.
You also are somebody who leverages your community to do the work that you do, and I think the New Wave certainly did that in their way. But 40 years ago, you started the Austin Film Society, which is still thriving to this day, and I think it's a good testament. Yeah, and I think it's a good testament to the value of, when you're a filmmaker, that there's another step beyond that in terms of how you create resources to do what you do.
Yeah, I always admired Nouvelle Vague. The film, it's really about the Cahiers du Cinema crowd. They're writers, just film freaks, really. And I kind of found myself in that environment. I wanted to create that environment because it really does nurture you. You know, those guys were, they were critics, they were writers, but always saw themselves as future filmmakers. So I think everybody, even if you're not doing that yet, even as I was programming films and showing films to the public, I consider myself a future filmmaker. I was editing, I was shooting shorts, I was writing, I was doing all that, but I had this parallel life in cinema, and I always advise everyone to, you know, volunteer, you know, get into, you know, cinema is like a marriage of some kind. You just kind of, you know, it's a calling. You get into it, you know, priesthood or whatever, you know, and then that's your life. You just have to dedicate your life to it and see where it takes you. You know, even if I remember reading Tarkovsky's book in English, it's called Sculpting in Time, and he says, yeah, you don't know. He wasn't sure even after his first film if he was really a filmmaker yet, but he knew cinema was his life. So yeah, I didn't know. That's like, well, here's what I want to do, but I don't know if it's going to work out. You should always, there's kind of this, there should be this kind of humility to it, I think, always.
Also, I think it's notable that by creating the Austin Film Society, you created a way for people to constantly be revisiting film history and learning about it. And I wonder what you make of the need for filmmakers to continually be watching other films, given that sometimes people are just sort of lost in their own, you know.
Well, it's the modern world too. It's even more than ever. You could live in your own head, in your own apartment, in your own phone. You know, it's like, I think community is so important because film is the communal art form of all time. Not only at the end, you know, watching it in a theater with others, hopefully, but making a film together. It's a communal undertaking to make a film. I mean, there's a leader if you're a director, but, you know, that's kind of the beauty of it. That's what I love about it. You know, so it couldn't be more about community. So create your own community. You know, I'm really, wherever you are, if it's not already there, you're joining a community, you're creating a community, little groups within communities, you know, it's beautiful. Because those will be the friends you make films with, and you support their films, and, you know, it's kind of wonderful.
You had a trajectory as a filmmaker that, in certain ways, is very familiar to people now, but I think was a little bit more dramatic at the time. In that 45 years ago, Slacker becomes this big hit. 35 years ago, excuse me. 40 years ago, AFS. 35, Slacker.
Yeah, 91 it came.
It was released, right?
Yeah.
So, and that, you know, movie has this really dramatic effect for you, and you get a chance to make studio stuff, and you don't exactly stay in that zone. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what it was like to get in there at such an early stage.
And that, you know, I feel, I don't know if guilty is the word, but you know, when I talk to young filmmakers, and it was such a different time that just doesn't exist anymore, that, you know, I made this weird indie film that was kind of an indie success, but that I would get a call from a studio guy, and it wasn't because of that film. He even told me it's what he heard. I did an interview and said, oh, I want to make this kind of teenage rock and roll movie, a bunch of teenagers hanging out in 1970. You know, I described the movie, and he called me up from Universal and said, hey, you know, this film you're talking about sounds kind of interesting. Like, I saw your first film, and, you know, but this sounds like a real movie, you know. So like, yeah, it's a real movie. And so I went at a meeting. I mean, I wrote a good script that they liked. You know, you get your chance, but that doesn't happen anymore. I don't think Sundance or South by, you know, these. If that was like the major leagues, the minor leagues, you know, they don't really call you up anymore. No one calls you up and asks, "What are you doing next?" You're more on your own than ever, but there's the freedom there too. You have to navigate within that world. Just there's not an industry there that's gonna necessarily help you in that, but they're gonna accept you on when you fit in. That's how I feel like I've been trying to fit in ever since.
Also,
Every project has its own possibility.
But yeah, also once the Dazed and Confused experience happened, it seemed like you found yourself in Austin doing projects in a different kind of way that not only gave you more freedom, but also gave you a chance to innovate. So making films like, say, Waking Life, you know, with an Austin group of people that nobody had ever seen a movie like that before.
I stuck with that, you know. I said no to so much and just tried to keep my thing going, so.
you have to seem to unlock something about how to explain a project to people so that they might want to do it with you, even if it doesn't sound like the most commercial undertaking.
Well, yeah, you gotta be a cheap hustler, you know. You gotta have some charm. You gotta put the best. You know, like in any relationship, you can be charming and all these things for a while, but the real you will show up sometime. I hope the real me doesn't show up till like post-production. Yeah, that's when they see the film and go, "Wow, is that not as commercial as you implied, or whatever." I can live with that. But yeah, you got to put the best. You know, here are the film's assets. Here's why people will like it, and you know. Sometimes you're right. It does. Everybody does like it. So it's good to deliver that every now and then. But yeah, you just gotta. I don't know.
Well, just to drill down on that a little bit more, a movie like Boyhood, you go in front of someone and you say, "I want to spend over a decade making a movie." How do you?
That was the craziest ask ever.
Yeah. So walk us
For
through
sure.
that, because I'm sure many filmmakers in the room want to try it themselves. So.
Yeah.
You're making a musical now that you'll finish.
Yeah, I did the same.
Right?
I did a similar ask, but you know, you work backwards. You kind of go, okay. On Boyhood, the thing was, and I ran it by a few producers. A producer I just worked with, a young guy. I said, "Hey, here's the idea," and he's like, "I just can't. What about the money? You know, it just doesn't make any sense." So I went to Jonathan Searing at IFC. I said, "You guys are a corporation. What are you going to be?" You know, just ask people, "What are you going to be doing 12 years from now?" You know, this corporation. Hopefully, you're still in business. You know. So, here's the idea. At the end of 12 years, you'll have a film with Patricia Arquette, Ethan Hawke, that I made. You know, I think it'll be worth the small budget that you're going to give us incrementally over the years. You gave us like $200,000 a year for 12 years. I said, that's a pretty good deal. And here's what will be the movie. I don't have a script, but here's the idea. And you know, he's like, well, it sounds just crazy enough that, yeah. But I had made two films with him. He had done Waking Life, and I'd done Tape with him, 2 super low budget films at that time that he was happy with. So, you know, the great thing about this industry, we're all here by an act of faith. Everything you do, you're taking a leap. Creative leap, trust leap. We all trust each other. You have to trust your instincts. You know, and some people you just meet. And when I tell filmmakers, it's like, if no one wants to support you, that just means you're not ready yet. Maybe you don't have the confidence, or something's not exuding from you that needs to be for people to believe in you. And that's usually you believing in yourself and you can't fake that. You have to earn that through your own experience, your own confidence, your own hard work and dedication. But I think the timing works out when it's when it's meant to. And so on that, it wasn't out of the blue. It was someone I'd worked with a couple times. They trusted me. I'd done what I said I would do, and you know, so it was that relationship. And that's the blessing. The more you do this, you do have these long-term relationships. People I've worked with, known and worked with 20, 30 years. And so you earn that because you've built those relationships.
What tips do you have for dealing with failure? Whether it's something you made that doesn't work, or something that you would love to get made and it falls apart at the last minute?
Well, it's just, you know, what is failure in art? You know, there's failure in the real world, you know, some product doesn't work. Art is so subjective. I just never accepted the definition, you know, of what is failure, you know. I just don't, it's so undefined to me, you know, so in certain things are pretty white, you know, black and white. You can say pass, fail, win, you know, but I think our system sees the world in that way, that kind of binary, you know, success, failure. But the arts are so loose, and that's what I loved about the arts. And I had a sports background, and that is pretty zero sum. You win or you lose, you know that. I felt so great to be in the arts. And like, God, I'm just doing this for myself, you know. I'm just watching 3 films a day. I'm up all night editing the short I shot. I just dedicated my life to it. I loved it so much that I didn't care what anyone thought. It didn't matter. You know, I made short films that were not any good, but they were my own development. I barely showed them to anybody. It's like, oh, I'm on my own path. I'm going to do this. And some people either disliked or didn't get my early films, and I was like, that's cool. I get it. Some people do, some don't. It's like you can't. What I guess I'm saying is you can't be doing this for other people's, approval. Yeah. Although you need it ultimately in the world to keep doing it, but I think you just do it for yourself, But I don't know if that sounds exactly right, but that's what I'm getting at. Like, yeah, I know people look at my career like, even they go, oh, that film, it didn't make money, so that's a failure, and I don't look at it that way. I love that film. I had a great time making it. It's the exact film I wanted to do. I'm sorry it didn't do better in the world. Maybe people will see it in the future. Fuck it,
Right.
Success.
Right.
It worked out well for you. As a former baseball player, you come out of the game, you went 0 for 4, but you said, I hit that ball in the screws, the shortstop caught it. I hit another one. I didn't have it back. I know it looks bad in the books, but I got a little better today. Next time I face that pitcher, I got his curveball now. You gotta be working. Everything's a step forward. You're getting better every day, or you're getting worse, just like sports. So you're getting to be a better filmmaker every day, or you're not.
It's the art
as soon as you can do to be getting better.
Right. There's the art side of it. There's also the business part of it. And one thing I think is interesting is like the market keeps changing. You walk around Cannes here, people are
fuck the business. I know.
But you say that navigate it pretty well.
Yeah, I got no choice. It's like we got to swim in the water we're all in, right?
Well, like on your last film, my understanding is you had another entity that was going to make it with you, and then which one did with Hitman?
Oh yeah, Hitman was tough to get off the ground. Yeah, people were right up to Greenlit. Oh, it's Greenlit. We're working on a budget. The guy at the company that's going to do it says, "Oh yeah, we're making it." I wouldn't be here working on the production side of it. It was all that set, and then some executive calls in and says, "Oh yeah, I don't really get this film. It just goes away." So yeah, it's frustrating.
And then how do you keep going and not just pivot to something else?
Your budget gets a little smaller. Oh, and guess what? You're not, in fact, getting paid anything this time. It's like, okay, I'm used to that. And then, you get the film made, and you're kind of in opposition too. It's kind of like, fuck that guy. I never met him, and I still haven't. That's the problem. The way they greenlight film some office somewhere, they used to sit down and have lunch with you. But it's like, but I get the last laugh. I'm like, oh, it's a pretty good film. Everybody was, kind of bidding on that. Maybe you wish you would have done it. I like to think that. I know they don't give a shit. But for my own purposes.
But what do you
we have to delude ourselves. That's what I have to say. You have to be a creative, your own best friend, healthy delusion is required for an art career.
What about who you surround yourself with? Because obviously there's a whole group of agents and other sort of gatekeepers who jump on filmmakers once, especially nowadays. So what do you make of sort of how to navigate that side?
Well, just people you can be friends with. So I'm happy to say, my lawyer and agent and people I've now been with 30-something years, just because they're like friends and we work together. And, you can't expect the world from anyone. So we all, whatever. Again, I don't think they're going to make or break you. Someone else isn't going to make or break you. You have to. They're working for you, and hopefully, in a way that's not annoying to you. I don't know.
The other part of it, though, is that not only is the market for movies changing all the time, but the market for people's attention is changing. And there are a lot of people who feel like they have to chase that, whether it's making a horror movie now or making something for social media or whatever it is that people are presumably paying attention to.
Yeah.
How do you not give in to those impulses to try to do whatever the market is saying to do?
Well, I'm too out of it to even. I think if you're 23 right now and it must be just a cacophony of images and possibilities, and everyone has a podcast and everyone has a YouTube channel, and I got this and distribution. That's overwhelming. I'm so glad. But again, I'm privileged. I'm older. I'm from that generation that just could kind of settle into some kind of paradigm and like, I believe in feature films, you know? That's what I want to try to do, and I really do believe in that format. I think that's not going anywhere. People want to see films, people think in terms of stories and, you know, TikToks and these short things. There's always been short, like, little fun distractions, short films and interstitials on TV, but we think in narrative arcs, and everybody wants to tell stories, and I really believe the sky's always falling. Oh, the human consciousness, I don't think it's changing that much. You know, the world outside is changing, you know, we're living in science fiction, but I think there's a constant within our art form that is a story, you know, that becomes a feature film. So, I believe in that. I think everybody here believes, you know, everybody believes in it. I think it's under threat. Is that what you're kind of implying? Like, yeah. But I'm encouraged, you know. Our audience at the Film Society, I'm so amazed how young it is. You know, that there's just so many young people. You know, I think it'd be a temptation. Someone older to say, yeah, you know, kids today, they're all staring at their phones and now, you know. But you see a community come together. You see a group of people at a movie. They sit there and watch the movie, and they have a discussion after, and they're passionate about film. They go home and watch another film by that filmmaker on the Criterion Channel, and then they come back to the theater the next day. You know, there's cinephilia is eternal, and so I'm really encouraged. I guess it's the letterbox generation too. That's okay. You know, they're excited about film, so. I'm pretty optimistic about it. You know, I'd like to see that. You know, in the Film Society, we were successful from the jump. 1985, we were sold out shows. I was in Austin, Texas, and there was a need for it. And it was right at the time film societies, campus film societies were kind of going out of business. But that was technical. Videos had come in, the 16 millimeter prints had gotten worse, a lot of educational. They had to show those films for classes in college, and the prints were expensive, and now they could just show a video. It's just, there was an economic reason the film societies went away, I think. And I think they're now tuned to a revival, not, and maybe in their own way, you know, economics. Like it's cheaper to ship around a DCP than a print. You know, maybe there's, but I think we're in a new environment that these little film communities can have a hub. You know, every town has a theater that's sitting there empty that went out of business or something. I think three people can come together and create a film scene, and then you can hustle an audience, and you know, a few passionate people, they pick up on it. Everybody loves movies. And everybody in their community loves the idea of people getting together in the community, and everybody loves that if you could start a nonprofit and find the local, someone with money to help you renovate the theater, and you know, so it's just, you know, put that cinema passion out in the world, and it'll come back to you. You know, so I really believe in that, and I've always felt, you know, that way about showing films. So it's kind of a parallel backbone to everything I do.
How important is it now, you think, for filmmakers to fight to have their movies?
Yeah, it does show in theaters. You know, the cinephiles have to get out there in those weeks that it is in theaters or can come around, but I don't know. I'm kind of against the purity test. There's a few people who can, there's a handful of people fortunate and successful enough to be able to insist on certain things, but you know, I'm not really one of them. You know, I'm like, whatever works. So, can't really put restrictions on it, but I don't know. You gotta get lucky. I hope it works out that your film can be in theaters at all.
Right, and the other part of it obviously is how much do you care that people see the thing? And you talked a bit about, you know, the question of failure and whether or not that's real, but it's also really hard to know what success looks like from an audience standpoint when it's kind of fragmented.
Yeah, but you know, it's been that way for the last, I'd say in the video, DVD era, it was always like that. You know, you make an indie success, and then even a few years later when people come up to you and say, hey, I really like that film, it's like, did you see it in the theater? No, I rented it. No, I got it, you know, over the years, no, I rented it, I got it at Blockbuster, you know, whatever. So indie films always have been seen in the secondary. You know, they really build their cult followings largely through that. Now that midnight films are long gone. You know, that was kind of fun when your film played for a year at midnight, you know, at a theater, but that's not the world we're living in now. But, you know, I'm never offended if someone says, hey, I saw your movie on an airplane, and I'm like, awesome. I like Hitman movies, you know, wherever. The indie world, you have to accept whatever, you know, it's like, great, you saw it on an airplane? I mean...
Nouvelle Vague would not be necessarily movie I would say watch first on an airplane, but I guess,
but
you know, you take what you can get. But before we wrap, can you just speak really quickly to how to stay healthy in this business? Do you have off hours where you just kind of unplug, or what is your process like there?
Well, first thing, stay healthy in life. That would be a good start. And then, don't have bad habits. But stay healthy? I don't know. Take care of yourself. Define health. I don't know.
Mental health.
Yeah. Have a good support group. Keep a low overhead. Good friend group, and always remember, you know, look, I go back to my own beginning. I just wanted a life in film, whatever form that take. If I lived in a little room full of books, and you know, and if I could just be involved in cinema, I would. That was a good deal. So I think if it's your lifetime, it's a happy life. You know, if you spend your life doing what you want, that's the goal of everybody's life, right? The hours of your day are spent doing what you're passionate about, whether that's showing a movie, making a movie, editing a movie, distributing a movie, whatever. You know, this world is wonderful. It's full of the best people, smart. Cinema itself is optimistic. You know, we're all hoping. You know, everything's a leap of faith, but you know, there's a lot of belief there and a lot of optimism, I think. So it's an optimistic art form. So, I don't know. It's a great thing to be a part of, I think.
It's a great note to end on.
Yeah.
Thank you for being here. Thank you, everybody.